Hello there, kia ora. You may have noticed over the past few weeks I've been pretty focused on the trash fire that was the local election campaign, where I did a job so good, even the founder of Voices for Freedom said that my work was better than theirs, despite years of them setting up localized support structures, embedding themselves in local community pages, taking over local community issues, dealing with local right-wing media, and outright lying to voters, all while being funded mysteriously because they don't have to release any of their financials because they're an incorporated society and not a charity, and nobody who follows them ever seems to ask the question about where all the money comes from. Anyway, what that means is that I've been missing out on that other trash fire, that's central government. And as we come up to the 2-year mark of a very long coalition of chaos and power, there's still outcomes that we're seeing from their approach which aren't surprising, sadly, because the research and the data has long showed us that the outcomes that we're seeing were always going to be the outcomes that happened. That's why I've been using it in my content for years. Here, let me show you what I mean. In March 2024, I released this video on how the coalition's policies were perfect for setting us up for another brain drain. This week, it's been announced that we've seen the largest ever number of people leave the country in August of this year. In August of 2023, I did this video pointing out that National's fully costed tax plan would hurt low-income earners and beneficiaries disproportionately by re-indexing benefits and increasing costs on goods and services which we all need, which disproportionately impacts low-income households. We're now paying twice as much for goods like butter than we did then. Our rate of consumer price index has been trending up again, wage growth has slowed, minimum wage is increasing below the rate of inflation, and the cost of rates, rents, and power have all been driving increased costs that pushed inflation back up again. In this video, also from August of 2023, I point out that incorporating ACT Party policies would see the shrinkage of the tertiary education sector and a breakdown of relationships between the Crown and iwi. The disestablishment of Te Pukenga saw the imminent closure of rural education options, with others within the field expressing disappointment that the new models are going to impact everything from budgets to pass rates, while having hundreds of people suddenly out of work, while the National Iwi Chairs Forum are taking part in the National Strike Day in October, I think it's October 23, over the treatment of Maori by this government, including agreeing to progress the RSB, which had 97% of submitters against it proceeding. Back in May of 2024, I did this piece saying that artificially accelerated arguments for change in Kāinga Ora were an excuse between mates to make changes to emergency housing, which would see a rise in people becoming homeless. In Auckland, the number of people sleeping rough doubled over the next 12 months. In April of 2024, there was this piece pointing out that the government's tough on criminals stance is not being tough on crime and would lead to increased crime rates in specific areas and increased number of people in prison. Since then, we've seen an increase in some very specific types of violent crime and victimization data, and in September this year, the prison population reached an all-time high, and people still don't feel safe. In February of 2024, I did this piece on how banning gang patches was problematic for a number of reasons like freedom of speech suppression and driving crime underground. This week, it was revealed that gangs are making twice as much money on illicit drug dealing than they were a year ago, and the courts keep finding that the patch ban breaches the Bill of Rights. In this video from August 2023, I pointed out that the New Zealand First List was full of conspiracy theorists and hard right, bad faith actors and would result in culture war bullshit and conspiracies being peddled in Parliament. And which party introduced bills about trans people in bathrooms, trying to declare English an official language, push for the second conspiracy-fueled COVID inquiry, push to remove RSE from schools, set an angry mob on a non-binary MP that has resulted in arrests for significant death threats, and vilifies anything they don't like as woke. In March 2024, I talked about how current government medical funding policy was going to see an increase in crowdfunding attempts for medical care here. In November of 2024, we saw that $15 million annually was raised by Give a Little for medical procedures, the highest amount ever raised on that platform for that field. What I'm trying to get at here is that these outcomes were as inevitable as TPU missing the point by, but also nailing the fact that they are casting themselves as fascists in the Star Wars movies in a post-election celebration, and that public servants would be angry at being undervalued while landlords and tobacco companies get tax cuts. They were inevitable because the thoroughly researched data told us specifically what the outcomes would be. And there's so many other examples that we see from this coalition, like how boot camps were derided for being a pathway to fitter, faster criminals. And we saw an 80% recidivism rate from attendees, and staff being allowed to use physical force to punish the kids involved. Or how changing the laws that to benefit tobacco companies would, also lead to an increase of tobacco sales, while also seeing an increase in things like drug use, because people need coping mechanisms to deal with the day-to-day stress that's being put on them. Oh yeah, look what happened. Because we don't always recognize gradual change, like the frog in the boiling pot, sometimes people don't realize what's happened or the impacts on them directly. But as we go into the final year of this government that caused the worst recession since the 90s, drove away more New Zealanders than ever before, cost us more financially, created more division than ever before, and made lives harder for almost everyone except their donors, we need to remember that all year. And when it comes to the polls next year, we can show the government what the real impacts have been for each and every single one of us, especially those of us who aren't entitled, wealthy, and sorted. Hey, thanks for sticking around till the end of the video. While you're here, why not hit that like button or share the video or even subscribe to the channel. You could even become a paid YouTube member so you can see things released in advance, you get access to some exclusive content, and like all these awesome people, you get to have your name at the end of the credits as well.